Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, September the 30th, the last day of the month of September. I thought we'd kind of take this as an opportunity to recap the tropical season so far in the Atlantic Basin and what it appears will take place over the next few weeks. Certainly a lot of activity right now as we're about to begin the month of October. First, we'll start off with a recap of Hurricane Helene. It crashed ashore as a Category 4 hurricane, a major hurricane, on a Thursday evening, late evening, somewhere around the Perry, Florida area, the Big Bend region of Florida's Gulf Coast, then pushed north through Georgia, and as we feared, produced a ton of rainfall over the southern Appalachians. This is a map of the last 5 days of total rainfall amounts, and this region here in the southern Appalachians, and we talked about this as a threat, got hit with tremendous rainfall amounts here. We had several hours of strong upsloping flow of air, just kind of the combination of the track of the storm that resulted in upslowing flow of air rising up in those southern Appalachian mountains and just squeezing out all that tropical moisture in terms of heavy rainfall. Some reports were as much as 2 to 3 feet of snow. Western North Carolina hit a very hard place like Boone, North Carolina, Chimney Rock, North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, southwestern Virginia, even upstate Georgia and South Carolina hit by some tremendous rainfall amounts. You can see the legend right here. And again, there were some reports of as much as 2 to 3 feet of rain that just wiped out some small towns here. And of course, a lot of rainfall where landfall took place here in the Perry, Florida area late Thursday evening, and a lot of rainfall throughout Georgia as well. We'll take a look at where Helene ranks on landfalling hurricanes over the next couple of minutes. But again, it wasn't only Florida that was hit with a significant impact from this system all the way up into the southern Appalachians. Well, here's a list of the strongest landfalling hurricanes going way back to the 1800s, and Labor Day storm here, before storms were even named, back in 1935, really pounded the Keys, for example, in Florida with an 892 millibar center at the time of the landfall. Helene shows up on the list here, right here, now tied with 16th, 938 millibar central pressure upon landfall on a Thursday evening here, September 26th. And again, it was right near Perry, Florida, the Big Bend region of Florida. Now, it was classified as a Category 4, first increased to Category 3, and then all the way to Category 4 before landfall. I didn't see any reports of Category 4 type maximum sustained winds at the surface, but nonetheless it was classified as a Category 4. We'll see if they do any kind of a post-analysis at NOAA. But again, it shows up on the list here as number 16 on the all-time list. And Labor Day storm in 1935, followed by Hurricane Camille in 1969, Michael, Katrina, and Andrew. Again, quite an interesting list. Hurricane Helene was certainly one of the strongest to make landfall in the Big Bend region of Florida. Well, let's kind of slow down here and take a look at where we stand with respect to the Atlantic Basin tropical season. I want to go to the ArcfieldWeather.com website and go to the tropical outlook that we put out way back in the springtime, just to show a very interesting map that has turned out to be quite a useful map here. We'll go to the actual posting here that we put out way back in April, and this right here has certainly turned out to be kind of an accurate map to show here. This is the tendency for where hurricanes show up during La Nina type seasons, and we warned about the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico with this kind of a map here. This is all based on climatology, and indeed that has turned out to be pretty accurate so far, and indeed it looks like there may be more activity. We'll talk about this in a moment in the Caribbean Sea or the Gulf of Mexico that we'll have to monitor closely over the next week to 10 days. Well, here's a current look at the Atlantic Basin, and we are now all the way down through the 10th named storm of the tropical season, Isaac, in the far North Atlantic, moving in a northeasterly direction, and Joyce reached named tropical storm status over the weekend, 10th such storm. If you go back to our outlook, we predicted 16 named storms. Certainly still have a chance of getting up that high. We have a few weeks to go here. We're now just moving into October, and certainly an active look to the scene here. Now, this is the area of interest that I alluded to a moment ago, the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and it certainly looks like there'll be a system, at least by the weekend. Exactly where it ends up, how strong it ends up, a little bit too early to say. There are some mixed signals, but again, the Gulf of Mexico is an area of interest in about a week or so, maybe beginning this weekend into the early part of next week. And again, there are a lot of activity even over the far eastern Atlantic Ocean. So it's certainly looking like at least the first half of October will have quite an active look to it, both over the tropical Atlantic and the Caribbean Sea and Gulf of Mexico. Now, I mentioned that we are now up to 10 named storms in the Atlantic for this tropical season. That is only one metric to monitor tropical activity. In fact, it's not quite as good, in my opinion, as what we call the accumulated cyclone energy, the ACE. That takes into account not only the number of named storms, but the longevity of each storm and the magnitude of each storm. So the ACE is really a better metric to use for for the assessment of overall tropical activity. This particular table comes from Colorado State University, and it has the ACE not only for the Atlantic, which is shown at the top line here, but also for the Pacific and Indian Ocean and the Northern Hemisphere as a whole. And we were below normal basically throughout the Northern Hemisphere in terms of the ACE index here, the accumulated cyclone energy. In the Atlantic, not too far below normal, but the normals are shown here for this date, September 30th, in the parentheses here. So we have what is numbered as 77.7, a little bit below the 94.1 that is normal for September 30th. So the Atlantic Basin, despite the recent very strong system, Hurricane Helene, is still a little bit below normal in terms of the accumulated cyclone energy. And the Pacific Ocean is well below normal here. You can see it's split into two depending on where you are with respect to the international date line. Northeast Pacific below normal, and the Northwest Pacific west of the international date line also below normal. So overall in the Northern Hemisphere, quite a bit below normal as we are about to enter into the month of October. So again, not only is the Atlantic Ocean below normal, but the more important in terms of overall global activity, the Pacific Ocean is well below normal. That produces well below normal for the Northern Hemisphere. We'll see what happens over the next several weeks. Well, let's wrap up by taking a look at last night's zero-Z run of the GFS, the surface forecast maps. First of all, in the Mid-Atlantic region, we've been stuck in a rut here with a moist maritime air mass stuck in place, and really it'll take until the midweek, a frontal passage at the late Wednesday night time frame to sweep out this maritime air mass. Until then, continuation of lots of clouds, moist low-level flow of air, and occasional showers in the Mid-Atlantic region. That upper-level trough to kind of set up, joining up with the tropical moisture late last weekend, still hanging around the Mid-Atlantic region now. Nothing right now over the Gulf of Mexico, but we'll push forward here. Again, this is using the zero-Z run of the GFS. And again, here, continuation of damp conditions, lots of clouds through Tuesday. And then we're starting to see some rain show up over the Gulf of Mexico. And here we go into the latter part of the week. This is now Friday morning forecast map. You do see low pressure starting to show up. Certainly not a major low at this particular time, but it's sensing some kind of a tropical system entering the Gulf of Mexico this weekend. And then the models are kind of all over the place. Some have a system moving off to the north and east towards the west coast of Florida. Others have a system going into the western part of the Gulf of Mexico. This is midday on Saturday. Even this particular model run has relatively weak system here over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and kind of a secondary reflection over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Go out a little bit farther in time, and again you have two separate systems, neither one of which looks all that impressive right now. So we'll just have to wait and see. But again, kind of based on climatology and based on what we're seeing on the maps, the Gulf of Mexico is the area to look for some tropical activity by the upcoming weekend and perhaps into the early part of next week. This goes all the way out into a week from right now. And here we have kind of an intensification over the southern Gulf. A week from right now, this is next Monday, October 7th. And again, kind of another reflection of a low pressure area a little bit farther to the north and east. But we'll certainly monitor the Gulf of Mexico over the next week to 10 days or so. Not quite done yet with the 2024 Atlantic Basin tropical season, so a lot to monitor over the next few weeks. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.